everyone, and welcome to the entrepreneurship video series about how to launch your new startup. I'm Marina Glazman. I'm a founder and a contributing writer on entrepreneurship for Business Insider, Entrepreneur Magazine, and have been published in Fast Company, Crunchbase, and on other outlets. I'll be hosting this conversation with Sergio Monsalve. Sergio is the founding partner at Roble Ventures and is a lecturer at Stanford, where he teaches entrepreneurship and education technology and the future of work. Sergio is also the co-founder of the Entrepreneur in Residence program at Stanford's Graduate School of Education. Sergio's full background, investment focus, and any articles and materials that we reference throughout this video are going to be linked below, so please check those out for further reading. So, Sergio, welcome, and please tell us what we'll be looking to discuss in this video series.
Thank you so much, Marina. I really appreciate you being here, and thank you all entrepreneurs, prospective entrepreneurs looking to start their own company. In this video series, we'll be discussing the principles of coming up with a new idea for a startup. You need to understand the customer needs. We'll talk about building the product. We'll be taking it to market as well, all while improving your odds of success and minimizing failure, which is critical to building your own new startup. I will do this by giving you some best practices that I know and some helpful tips. So I hope that this is a helpful video for you. Today specifically, we'll be starting just by talking about identifying the problem, especially through the customer journey, which is very important. As aspiring entrepreneurs looking to launch new startups and raise venture capital especially, I just think these fundamentals are critical, and I'm just glad that I'm putting this together in a video for you. I hope this is helpful for you.
Well, there's a lot to think about when you're considering a new business. Is there a single starting point, Sergio, that's common to any new venture?
For this first video, if we had to think of just one word, I would think of the word empathy. Empathy towards your customer, and especially towards their journey, is very important. So to illustrate this, I'm going to make it more actionable for you. I want to share specific examples. I want to share tactics. I want to share a playbook, especially playbooks that have worked in the past for the other founders that I know. And eventually you will be able to hopefully build a breakthrough product for the customers, and especially for the needs that they have. This is an exciting first step as you think about the birth of your own startup. So I hope this is helpful for you.
Okay, well, diving in then, Sergio, how do you identify a problem that's worth building a product or service around?
So Marina, let me give you an example of a great entrepreneur that I know, and I've worked with him for many years. This is Aaron Bali, the founder of Udemy. Udemy is now the leading online learning platform in the world. But Aaron didn't start that way. He had humble beginnings, and he has a remarkable story. And this is not unusual among great entrepreneurs that I've met. Aaron was born and raised in a small village in eastern Turkey. Aaron was one of those super curious kids. He loved math, he loved science, he loved chess. He wanted to read everything about it, was a voracious reader and a lifelong learner. But by a young age, he ran out of content. He ran out of things to learn in his own village. So he went to the internet and he tried to find everything else he could learn, and he found very little. So that's exactly the time when he said, well, there should be a place where I can learn anything from anybody in the world, and that's how Udemy came about. So in building Udemy, what's so interesting about Aaron is there are three key realizations he had early on to build his startup. Number one, he felt the pain himself deeply. Number two, he focused on overserving the earliest of adopters, and he intuitively understood that they would eventually become evangelists and really critical to his business. And that's important. He also spent time with the instructors to understand their pain as well. So the definition of the customer was not just the demand side, but it was also the supply side. So he had a much broader vision of the customer, which is pretty important. And so today, Udemy enjoys huge network effects and great success. In fact, they're the largest global marketplace for online education. They achieved something that is the holy grail of marketplaces, which is network effects. And this is thanks to the beginnings of really understanding and empathizing with a very nascent customer of his.
Interesting. So Aaron Bali was really his own first customer in the sense that he experienced the issue completely firsthand. And so what I wonder is, does this mean you need to experience a problem personally to truly understand it well enough to build a business around it?
Marina, not necessarily, but the best ideas do tend to come organically. I think Paul Graham, which is a great founder of Y Combinator, said it best. You should notice the problem. You should not think it up from the thin air. And that's an important point.
Okay, so notice problems, don't think them up. Makes sense. And how do you know if the problem that you've identified represents a good business idea? Surely not every problem is an opportunity.
I think if it meets these few conditions, then you might be onto something really big. Number one is, I think it's important to solve a deep pain point. You need to solve a large and deep pain point that your customer has, otherwise it's not worth solving. Number two, are your customers' assumptions based on real data or just opinions? For example, have you tested your customers' true willingness to exchange value, let go of something to receive something? This is essentially their willingness to pay, and that's an important point. Number three, are there a small set of early customers that could be your guinea pigs? These are customers that really need your product and are willing to tolerate their V1 version of your product, which is deficient by definition. That's important. These customers are incredibly important. Ultimately, keep in mind, your solution needs to be dramatically better than status quo. In other words, if your solution is redefining the playing field, you're onto something really big. But please, if you're the David, you're fighting Goliath, don't fight Goliath just on brute strength. Try to redefine how the game is played. And that's how disruptive technologies win against incumbents.
Okay, so let's say you think you've identified a pain point that meets all of these conditions and you're ready to take it on. What's going to be your first step?
Before you start building anything, I go back to Paul Graham's saying, you truly need to notice the problem. I would do that in the context of the full customer experience and the journey they're feeling, not just in a specific snapshot. In other words, don't just step into the customer's shoes, step in and walk around in them, because that's how you understand their full journey. There's a very cool and helpful exercise that I like to think about. It's essentially a step-by-step map of their actions as they perform them, as you hypothesize in an area that could dramatically be improved. This is called the customer journey map. The customer journey map is essentially defined as the complete sum of experiences that customers go through when interacting with your product. Instead of just looking at just the snapshot, you map out the way they experience the product in the full life cycle. And that's an important exercise and a helpful one.
Got it. So essentially, you need to not just diagnose a pain point in a vacuum, but put it into the full context of the customer's experience.
Marina, that's exactly it. Let's take a Starbucks as a good example. Imagine a time pre-Starbucks when coffee was just simply a utility, right? Especially in the US. For less critically thinking entrepreneur that was looking at the journey of this American coffee drinker, it might look pretty simple. You wake up in the morning, you make some coffee, pour it in a mug, put some milk in it, take a shower, and go to work, right? The less proficient entrepreneur might see this journey and conclude, hey, we just need better coffee. That is worthless. This is not good enough. It's not truly revolutionary. It's not disruptive. So on the other hand, let's look at Howard Schultz, the visionary behind what Starbucks is today. Howard realized there is much more to coffee than just the coffee. He traveled to Italy and noticed that an entire coffee culture existed there. He saw that people gathered around. They were very communicative. They truly experienced a truly emotional ritual. So he looked at this in detail and actually with a lot of empathy at this customer journey, and he saw an opportunity to give people much more than just a caffeine jolt. In fact, he envisioned a way to multidimensionalize the effect of caffeine, which is essentially is just energy, by fully serving the customer's ultimate full need and give him a full jolt of positive energy. And that might seem far-fetched, but let me tell you how he did it. Number one, when you walk in a Starbucks, you have control. Ordering your grande mocha latte with a splash of vanilla, half decaf, light whipped cream gives you a sense of control and individuality. You're special, right? So after that, you're ready to carpe diem. You start the day. You can do anything. It's a can-do attitude. So that's one. Number two is it's a care for yourself moment. This is your moment to treat yourself to an $8 cup of coffee. It's your guilty pleasure. And then number three, very important, is the community, right? People want to interact with each other, and that gives them pleasure. Understand they need to welcome them. In fact, at Starbucks, loitering is welcomed. They have free Wi-Fi. You could stay there as long as you want, and that gives you the sense of community. So what Schultz did ultimately is it turned out that caffeine pairs nicely with the other C's: control, care for yourself, and community. And by putting all that together, essentially, he created a jolt of energy that is much more than just caffeine.
It's so interesting to see how much more Schultz saw when observing a coffee routine than an average entrepreneur might have seen looking at the exact same thing.
Exactly. The bottom line is that great entrepreneurs are able to look deeper, much more empathetically, and they come up with insights that are not obvious to most people.
So for aspiring entrepreneurs who want to apply, some of these tactics in their own ventures in order to become effective observers and generate deeper insights, what can they be doing?
Yeah, so as you go through the customer journey mapping with a keen eye to noticing the subtleties, there are probably a few tactics that I would like to share with you. Number one is get to first principles of needs and desires. When you're talking to your customers, ask the 5 whys and get to emotions. I think those are great areas to probe further and understand what's lying behind the obvious answer. Number two, ask people about their annoyances, frustrations, unhappiness. These uncomfortable feelings are great hunting grounds for breakthrough solutions. They're emotions that are strong and negative, so naturally they seek positivity and a great solution to come and solve it. Number three, create word associations. Create a word cloud. As you walk through the customer journey, track non-obvious words that come up. If you ask them the word coffee, you may get words like caffeine, milk, sugar. But if you go deeper, you would arrive at things like my morning ritual or me time, start the day off right. All those words are important in coming up with a much deeper and better solution than what the status quo would give you.
Okay. So with customer feedback, when you're receiving all of this input along all these different parameters, what can you trust? I mean, can you always trust what you're hearing from customers?
Absolutely not. Customers won't tell you what they want or what they will pay for. Don't expect the answer. Unless you actually give them something tangible, they're not going to tell you whether they like it or not because they can't envision it. They will have a lot of opinions and they will make a lot of noise, but the key is to listen intently and don't rely on opinions. Rely on real data.
Got it. So listen for the problem, not the solution. Okay, so far we've identified a problem, built a customer journey map that traces all of someone's interactions with the product, and we figured out the dimensions along which you can improve that experience. It sounds like having deep customer empathy is really what got us to this point right now, right?
Yes, so far so good. We're doing well.
So what comes next?
So in our next video, I want to discuss how to evolve from having a one-way relationship with your customer, which through this empathy that we talked about, and just start beginning to build a two-way relationship by actually building something and putting it in front of your customers. This is where the engineer in me is really excited because we now get to build, and that's so exciting. I hope you can join us in the next video.
Well, I look forward to diving into the building of your product and the best practices around that first phase of product development So we will get into that in the following video. And Sergio, thank you so much for walking us through this initial process. This has been a great discussion.
Yeah, thanks again, everybody. Thank you, Marina. This has been a great conversation. And please subscribe and please set your alerts for the next video as we move on to being product builders. Thanks again, and thank you so much.
Thank you.